Hello. Okay. Now, current affairs, science and tech. Okay. Now, this is the first topic. We have to cover 5 topics. This is India's nuclear reactor. So, basically, what has happened? This. Basically, fast breeder reactor. This is the second stage of the 3-stage program that Homi Jahangir Bhabha imagined for Indians nuclear program. So in the second stage, we have achieved criticality. We'll understand all these terms. That is the whole point of this topic. Now, first thing, what is the recent milestone in India's nuclear program? So prototype of fast breeder reactors at Kalpakkam attained first criticality on 6th of April 2026. Okay, now first criticality, that is beginning of sustained nuclear chain reaction. 500 megawatt reactor is built indigenously by Bhavini, located at Kalpakkam, Tamil Nadu, marks India's formal entry into stage 2 of nuclear program. Now, let's understand each thing. So, if you look at this, so there are a 3-stage nuclear program was envisioned by Homi Bhabha. Now, what is that? So, stage 1 is what India already had, that is pressurized heavy water reactors. Okay, now here we were using natural uranium. Natural uranium is uranium-238 and 235 mix. Largely it is uranium-238, which is not radioactive. Okay, which is not fissile material. Fissile and fertile, you know. So there is fissile and there is fertile. Fissile is that can immediately go for nuclear fission reaction. Example of this is uranium-235. Then fertile is something that can be made into a fissile material. This is called uranium-238 and there is thorium-232, all these different. Here in fissile you can also note down plutonium-239. Okay, now the thing is that this is the stage 1, this is pressurized heavy water reactor. This we already have. We have quite a few number of reactors that work on this principle. Now, the stage 2 that he envisioned was the fast breeder reactor stage. Okay, now in fast breeder reactor stage, we'll be using plutonium-239 that is produced here. Okay, we'll see those reactions when we do regular classes. So eventually we get to plutonium-239 and from here we start introducing thorium-232. This is what happens in fast breeder reactors. Now see, so basic thing is that India has very large deposits of thorium. Thorium is very easily available around the world also. India has 25% reserves of thorium. But if you compare it with uranium, we have almost very nil, very small quantity of uranium that is found in India. That is why we are always dependent. Now, so Homi Jahangir Bhabha thought about this in the 50s and 60s only, that India should develop a program where we eventually start using thorium. That was the whole point. So now these are the 3 stages in which he divided it. First stage is already being done. Second stage, for the first time we have achieved criticality. Criticality means after this you don't have to provide neutrons or anything from outside. It can sustain a nuclear fission reaction on its own. This is known as achievement of criticality. Now, third stage, which we will try for next, will be where we start using mix of uranium-233 and thorium-232 completely. And here our main fuel will become thorium. Right now in this we just use little amount of thorium to convert it into uranium-233. So this is the third and final stage that we want to get to. Earlier we were just stuck at stage 1. For the first time we have achieved criticality in stage 2. Understood? Now, why is this milestone significant? So, India is only the second country after Russia with commercial FBR capability. Only the second country. Then, demonstrates decades of indigenous R&D in nuclear tech. Then, strengthens clean, reliable baseload power generation. Now, this term, okay, I keep using that you have to use a combination of renewable energy plus nuclear energy. Only this combination can replace thermal or fossil fuel based energy. Correct? Because renewable energy can provide you power that is clean and everything, but it cannot provide you base load power. Base load power is something that is present throughout the time, irrespective of the time of the day, season of the year. It does not matter. Correct? For example, thermal power plant provides you this, that if you want electricity right now, let's say sun is not there, nothing is there, still you can just burn coal, get electricity. Correct? You can get energy. Now, that renewable energy does not provide. Right now the wind is not flowing, sunlight is not there. So renewable energy always must be combined with, eventually if you want to make an entire energy mix that is clean. So this is the future. That is, if you want to have a clean energy, it must come as a combination of renewable energy and nuclear energy, because nuclear energy is again a very good base load power generator. That is, anytime you want, you can generate electricity or energy out of it. This of course supports India's net zero target till 2070, enhances strategic and technological self-reliance. All this is fine. Then, now explain India's 3-stage program. So this I have already explained you. PHWRs use natural uranium, produces plutonium. Then FBR uses plutonium and breed more fissile material, that is uranium-233. Last is thorium reactors use. This is large scale thorium utilization. This is based on closed fuel cycle and then conceptualized by Dr. Homi Jayanagara. Understood? This we have seen. Then, what are the key features of PFBR? This is developed by Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research. Then uses mixed oxide or MOX fuel, that is uranium and plutonium. Then next is fast neutrons enable breeding. Now see this. So fast breeder reactor, just see the breakdown of this term. See, first term, fast. Fast here means the neutrons are released. Correct? In a nuclear fission reaction, neutrons, a lot of neutrons are also released. Now, those neutrons are usually slowed down for the reaction to take place properly. Now, if they are not slowed down, it is called fast. Then next thing, breeder. Breeder means what? Breeder is that the amount of fissile material after a reaction is greater than the amount before the reaction. Okay, for example, So what happens? This plutonium 239 is actually a fissile material. It will break down. Okay. So now let's say some neutrons are also present. Now this neutron will attack this plutonium 239. It will break down and it will produce, for example, 3 neutrons like this. Now these 3 neutrons will again react with uranium 238. Now 1 neutron plus uranium 238, 238 plus 1 becomes what? Plutonium 239. Similarly, here also you will get plutonium 239 and here also plutonium 239. Can you see by the end of the reaction, once the reaction starts to end, you get more and more of plutonium 239. So you started with less plutonium, but you are ending the reaction, or after some time you have even more plutonium or fissile material. Now because what you started with was less plutonium, you end with more. This is called breeding, fast breeder reactors. Okay. Then the future is of course this, converting 232 to 233, that is the third stage. Then operates on closed fuel cycle. This is fine. Next, what is India's current power status? So installed capacity is around 8.78 gigawatt. Share in electricity is still 3%. Then electricity generation, this many million units. Then provides stable base load power, not intermittent. This is fine. Planned expansion is 22.38 gigawatt by 2130 or 3132. That is 3x growth. Then civil nuclear cooperation agreements with 18 countries. Civil nuclear cooperation means mainly related to nuclear energy, because same nuclear energy is also used to make atomic bombs. So that is another kind of collaboration that we don't have. So civil nuclear cooperation we have with almost 18 countries. Okay. Then if you want to remember only one figure, just remember this. Okay, 3.1% share in electricity. This has increased, like from in the last decade it has increased. It used to be around 1.5 to 2, now it is 3%. Then what is nuclear energy mission? That was talked in 25-26 budget. So this is 100 gigawatt by 2047. This is the target. That was the target for 2031. Then 20,000 crore allocation for small modular reactors. Correct. Then at least 5 indigenously designed SMRs. SMRs, you understand? Small modular reactors. So basically just a miniature or smaller version of the same nuclear plant that we had. So much smaller and comes in modules form. So you can basically assemble it and use it at different places. Then focus on scalable, flexible and safer reactor technologies, supports long-term clean energy transition. As you understood, nuclear energy is also a form of clean energy. Okay, it is not releasing any kind of carbon dioxide, this, that emissions. Mostly ultimately how you are getting energy in this? Through nuclear energy, you are generating heat. From that heat, you are boiling water. That boiling water becomes steam, turns the turbine, gives you electricity. Correct? Now, ultimately, it's just water. Everything else is just contained. Okay, so that's why it is considered clean. And then, what is Shanti Act 2025? So this is the act, sustainable harnessing and advancement of nuclear energy for transforming India. So they wanted to make it Shanti. So they just introduced some words. Okay. Now, modernizes India's nuclear legal and regulatory framework, enables limited. See, ultimately this act is about allowing the private sector to enter a nuclear energy generation market. This is the whole point of it. Okay, right now it is highly regulated, like before the passing of that, highly regulated. Only the government was allowed to produce all this. Then enables limited private sector participation, then ensures strict regulatory oversight and safety standards. Why it is written limited private sector participation? Limited. Why? Because the government is very clear in the Shanti Act that we are just providing the private sector the opportunity to generate small amount of energy, that is electricity. It will not involve private sector in any way, nuclear weapon or anything like that. Even the radioactive waste management, everything is under government only. Okay, so only small part, that is to commercialize, produce more small modular reactors, is why we are involving private sector in. Then open avenues for improve investment and innovation. This is one. Then what is the broader significance? So broader significance is marks transition from research phase to deployment, enables long-term thorium energy use, enhances energy securities and reduces import dependence, strengthen role of atomic energy, then position India as key pillar in clean energy mix, nuclear as key pillar in clean energy mix, supports sustainable and low cost, low carbon development pathway. Same things just written together. Okay. This is it for the first topic. Next we come to nuclear fusion viability. Okay, now fusion is what? Fusion is when two smaller atoms combine to form a larger atom. Okay, so yeah, see this. So if you see here, the reaction that is used here is this. This is deuterium meeting with tritium, then forming helium plus, of course, a lot of energy and one neutron. Now it is balanced. So 1 1 2 2 3 5 4 plus 1 5, correct, and a lot of energy. Why a lot of energy? The fundamental equation given by Albert Einstein always holds. E is equals to mc square, correct. So actually what happens, the helium, the mass of helium that you have here and the sum of mass here, so helium's mass is little less. This is like 4.03 and here let's say 4.04. So that 0.01, it is actually even lesser, that becomes the mass. When it is multiplied by c square you can understand, this is speed of light square. So 3 into 10 to the power 8 square. So even with a very small mass like 0.00001 gram also, this will get multiplied by 3 into 10 to the power 8 square. So this will become substantial amount of energy. Okay, then, so this is nuclear fusion. Then why it is in news? So study in nuclear energy says fusion cost projects are overly optimistic. So basically, I think we have talked about this in classes also, that nuclear fusion is not very viable right now. To show it viability, what we need is that it is able to produce 10x the input. Then only we will consider it that this is viable now. Otherwise, what is happening right now, to conduct nuclear fusion, we have to provide a lot of energy. Now, that much amount of energy it is taking, it is not able to generate 10 times that energy. So then it is economically unviable. That is what is being questioned in this. So now, risk of inefficient allocation of clean energy investment. So what they are saying is that instead of spending billions and billions of dollars on nuclear fusion reactors, we can instead allocate it to something else that is more practical, in the sense that can give us immediate advantages. Then funds may be diverted from more viable climate solutions, suggest alternative reactor designs, fuel smaller configuration. Okay, now what is nuclear fusion? This you understood. Two lighter nuclei combine to form a heavier nucleus, releases vast amount of energy, powers the sun and the stars. Hydrogen. So this was deuterium plus tritium, correct? That same reaction is equals to helium plus energy. Then the thing is, why nuclear fusion requires so much energy is actually, see, you see hydrogen in different forms around you also. Now they are not usually combining, correct? So to make this combination, that is Now, why would these two like to combine? Okay, in chemistry we learn about that when they have to give electron, take electron, share electron, then they would combine. Why would these two like to combine? They have no reason to combine. So basically, you're forcing them to combine. How you're forcing? By providing a lot of energy. Now, the eventual prospected, the amount of energy that you provide here, you get 10x the return. Then only it is worth it. Otherwise, it is just a very economically unviable exercise. This is the whole thing. Now, why does fusion release energy? So, fused nucleus has less mass than the original nucleus. We talked about this. Difference is called mass defect and converted using E is equals to mc square. Small mass converts into very large energy. Correct? Then, what conditions are required? Now see, extremely high temperature, close to 100 million degrees Celsius. Now, how do I get such high amount of temperature or heat? So basically, nuclear fusion is usually on Earth preceded by nuclear fission. So what we have to do? We have to do nuclear fission, generate that amount of heat and energy, then transfer it for the fusion to occur. Okay, then high pressure to bring nuclei close, plasma state, ions plus electrons, then required to overcome electrons' static repulsion. Then plasma, if you remember, super ionized gases, correct? So basically they are fragmented in this form. Any gas, for example, let's say neon, electron. In this case, the plasma will be made up of hydrogen. Okay, different isotopes of hydrogen, again similarly built. Then what is a tokamak? Now, tokamak is a reactor like this. Okay, now here whatever particles are generated, as you understood, this is plasma, so this is ionized particles. Now these ionized particles, they have so much heat and velocity. If you try to stop them using some physical barrier, let's say some very good quality steel, this that, it won't work. It will go through it like this. So that is why what they have developed is something known as tokamak. So tokamak does what? It has magnetic fields around it. Now, these charged particles actually interacts with the magnetic fields because they are charged. Okay, moving charge is actually electricity. Electricity and magnetism are convertible. For now, you understand that this is some charged particles. Charged particles are affected by magnetic fields. Now, because of the magnetic fields, they are not able to reach the end walls, and end walls are safe. This whole thing is called magnetic confinement. And this whole apparatus or system where this magnetic confinement and nuclear fission occurs is called a tokamak. So right now they have also started questioning tokamak as a design, that we should have some different ways, because this is according to like, if you look at in the economical way, it is not working very well. Then confine plasma in a donor shaped vessel, maintains plasma stability and confinement, longer confinement, sustained fusion reaction. All this is fine. Then what are the challenges to economic viability of fusion? So of course, very high capital cost and energy requirement, then highly complex technology and design, limited standardization and scalability, site specific constraints, seismic, water regulation, all this you have to manage. Then low cost reduction potential versus solar and fission. So this is what the article mainly argued, that focus on developing more low cost fission that is readily available to all the countries, everything, instead of putting so much money into nuclear fusion. Okay. But why they even started trying for nuclear fusion? Yes. Okay, so because this is not radioactive, correct? Hydrogen, hydrogen, helium. All these are not radioactive, correct? So this is much more safer. Also, the amount of energy released by fusion is many times the energy released by fission. Okay, sun and all are powered by nuclear fusion only. So most of the universe is actually powered by nuclear fusion. So that is why they are trying that if we are able to generate fusion, then we will have a lot more energy. A single nuclear fusion plant, if it is economically viable, it can generate many times the nuclear fission energy. Okay, that is why they are trying. Then next is internet protocol. Now see, what is the context regarding internet censorship? Now see, so study of 6 major ISPs in India show inconsistent censorship. So what this topic is about? So basically the government only 1414 out of 43,000 block domains were common across all ISPs. So what they found in this data analysis, they found that, for example, different ISPs, let's say Jio or Airtel or whatever, different ISPs are there. Now, government has ordered blocking of these many domains, but actually only these many are common. Otherwise, they are blocking some different things. So that means apart from these many domains, whatever else is left, using some other ISP, I can still open it in India, even though this is disallowed. And this is a problem. Why? Because if we are doing internet censorship, now you can argue about it in polity that there should not be internet censorship, this, that is fine. But if the government is ordering, why it is not on the practical level being done? That is the whole topic. Internet service provider. These are your same Jio, Airtel, all this. Okay. Then indicates fragmented and non-uniform blocking regime, raises concerns about transparency, accountability, and digital governance. Okay. Then what are internet protocols? So internet protocols, like you have protocol for VVIPs and all, you must have heard, correct? So they have a protocol how you will have to dress up if you have to meet them. They have a set of rules that everyone has to follow, correct? Now there was one case also where there was one IAS from Chhattisgarh. What he was so when he met the Prime Minister, he was like looking very dashing and all. With goggles, he went and shook hand, and the Prime Minister also praised him. That very dashing, whatever he would have said. Then internal inquiry was called on him, because that is not the protocol by which you can meet the Prime Minister. Okay, so there are similar internet protocol is set of rules governing data transmission over internet. Now this acts like a postal system, ensures correct delivery of each. Then core function is, of course, IP address, you must have heard, correct? So this is internet protocol address. First thing, the most important function is identifying the device from which you are getting this request. Let's say I type, you open youtube.com, so then my IP address tells that where he has to open the youtube.com, correct? Then enables communication between networks. So this is internet protocol. Then these are the 4 layers. First is application layer. This is the interface for users, HTTP, HTTPS, DNS. This S actually stands for secured by cryptography. So HTTP and HTTPS. S means it is a secured domain. Then this is the first layer. That is what you are using on the internet. If you see any link, it is like HTTPS. So that is the link. Then transport layer. This is what the user uses. Then transport layer ensures reliable communication. Okay, then you come to internet layer. This handles addressing and routing. So after the transport layer comes the IP layer, which is, it ensures that it reaches you only. Whatever request you have made, it reaches back to you. Then last is network access layer. This is the physical transmission of data. So now everything is aligned. So using your application layer, you requested something, transport layer transfers it. Then internet layer ensures that the addressing and everything is proper. Now it has to be sent also now to you in form of packets, correct? So that is the last physical transmission of data. This is using hardware, cables, Wi-Fi. Together this enables end-to-end communication over the internet. If you didn't have an IP address and all these layers, what can happen? I open, let's say, I open legacyis.com on my phone, then all the mobile towers or whatever are just beaming information. If this is not there, all these layers, it can open in your phone. Your phone can receive it and it opens on your phone. This actually ensures all these layers that it is routed correctly. Okay, then, so these are the 4 layers. Next, how does data transmission works? Okay, so this is just same thing, addressing, IP assigned, routing, then transmission, then reassembly. Next, what are the major types of internet protocols? Not very important, just see the names if you see sometime. So DNS is domain name system, HTTP, TLS, TCP, all these are different kinds of internet protocols. This only you need to know. Then now, yeah, this is important. What is the legal framework for internet censorship in India? So there is IT Act 2000. Under that there is section 69A, which gives government the right. Governments can block content on these terms: sovereignty, security, and public order. These are the 3 clauses under which they can block. Now, public order is a very vague term. Okay, so it can be applied in any way, and that's why there is so much censorship in India. Now, because the government was facing issues with respect to censorship, these global giants usually didn't have an office in India, okay, that will deal with all this. So then the government made like a year or 2 back, they forced that every company has to have an ombudsman here in Delhi. So now they can file the complaints directly. So that all is done. Now, section 79, this defines responsibilities of intermediaries or ISPs. Then licensing agreements, then ISPs must comply with government blocking orders, often under confidentiality. That is, you won't know exactly how things got blocked. Like one thing that got very famous recently, one guy on Instagram, he had made a mimicry video of the Prime Minister, of how he meets foreign ministers. Okay, now that video was actually blocked under following these norms. Now, it was not shown publicly in the data, you cannot know it, but because he was an influencer and his video was blocked, then he started sharing that video again and it became an internet reach. So that's why you got to know that something was blocked. Okay. Then what are the methods? Now, what are the methods for internet censorship? So there is DNS poisoning. Okay, just see the terms, not very important for you to remember them. Just have a very basic understanding. So now see, DNS poisoning is what? Basically, it returns to wrong IP or error page. So what will happen? Here, whatever, if let's say we're trying to open a domain that is blocked, it will route to a different IP. Now, because it does not match, so the layers won't match, so the data won't be proceeded. It will start showing you error or you cannot open this. Then cheapest and most common is HTTP or URL filtering. So basically government also just puts this, for example, HTTPS, let's say dot, if government wants to ban, then it can go this. Now, this is simply registered. If you try to open this, this is a blocked site, so this won't open. As simple as that. Now, why do we still need DNS poisoning and all? Because these websites, especially the shady ones, they keep changing the domain names little. Okay, keep changing the names. Sometimes they will add some adjectives, some numbers. So that's why you need DNS poisoning also. Now, apart from this, there is deep packet inspection. Now, this is what actually analyzes the data packets. that is advanced, precise but expensive. So here what happens, this is the not being used very widely, this is deep packet inspection. Here if you are trying to open a block domain, it will look at the domain, open it, read what is given in that website, and based on that, if the content is something that is already blocked, then it will not allow you to open it. Now of course this is the final frontier, but not being used very widely in India. So issue is different ISPs use different methods, non-uniform censorship. Then this is very simple news. Okay, Meghalaya Starlink deal, one-liner, that internet, satellite-based internet, you know. So basically Starlink you might have heard of. So on low Earth orbit they have many satellites that are rotating. Now those satellites are able to provide internet. Now 2 states in India already had tie-ups with it, Gujarat and Maharashtra. Now there is another state, that is Meghalaya, which has also got signed an MOU. It is very important for Meghalaya because if you know anything about Meghalaya, Meghalaya is very undulated terrains. Okay, there are 3 kinds of hills, you know, Garo, Khasi, Jayantia. Okay, so those 3 hills are there. It is not a very easy region to lay the internet cables. It is not actually very viable also. So if you go around camping and all, you might find villages where there are 5 homes. Now for those 5-10 homes, you cannot lay down the entire line through the mountains. Okay, that much also democracy we don't have, because it is not at all economically viable. So there what works best? Satellite based internet, because for satellite it does not matter, it is just above the earth, whatever is the terrain it can reach it. Now so recent development that has taken place regarding satellite internet in India, Meghalaya signed an MOU with Starlink India for satellite based internet connectivity, 3rd state after Maharashtra and Gujarat. Starlink launched in 2019 by SpaceX, this is fine. Then plans, this is about Starlink, okay, not specifically for the Starlink and Meghalaya program. So basically it has plans of launching 42,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. Then this is among largest satellite internet constellations globally. They are just more excited, they had more resources. Not like Meghalaya really needs it. Maharashtra and Gujarat, yeah, some regions they may be using it. So actually the thing is that satellite based internet, na, it is very strategic also in every way. Strategic as in, of course, for wars and all, and the other thing is this works very well for disaster management. Because when there is a disaster, let's say floods and all is also common in Maharashtra, Gujarat, everywhere. Correct. Now there, all the lines that you have of internet, mobile internet, everything will be destroyed. Then what is left? Satellite based internet, because it can still go above your area. So in rescue operations, in the entire disaster management cycle, it can be of very important use. Okay. And of course wars and all, war we look at an India level, that is if we have to fight war and all, this also becomes very important. Okay. Then what is satellite internet and how does it work? So normal internet is fiber, cables, towers, all this. Then satellite internet is signals bounce between satellites, ground station, user dish. So basically this is a user dish like this. Now this user dish can send signals to a satellite. Now these satellites, they usually have inter-satellite links also. So this will send it to another satellite and this will go to the ground-based servers. For example, if I am trying to open youtube.com, it will go to Google server and then back from the satellite to on this antenna, and this antenna may be connected to, like there is a router or anything that it will be connected to, and then I can use it on my phone. And this is how it works. So now actually they have reduced this Starlink, they have reduced it to a small box. So that small box you can take, and that will be enough. That is enough antenna. It can send signals, receive signals, do everything. This is being used by, if you see vloggers and all, that not the Indian ones, ki idhar aaye, ye wo, not those, but who are going into very interior lands in Africa and Amazon and all that. Of course, they don't have internet. Okay, so for them to record everything and relay it live, what they have started using, they take a car, let's say, or a vehicle, on that they will install it, and then they are getting constant internet. Okay. Then Starlink, Starlink uses LEO, that is low latency, faster speeds. Then segments, spaces, satellites, ground, gateway, user dish, all this is fine. Starlink is distributed by Reliance. I don't have. Okay, so yeah, so they may be having the agreement and then they will be providing it. But the thing is that satellites and everything is of Starlink only, that is SpaceX. Then, why satellite internet is important for a state like Meghalaya? Difficult terrains, fiber laying, expensive and slow, needs only power and clear sky. Quick deployment. Then disaster resilience during floods and landslides, very common in Meghalaya. Then connect schools, hospitals, panchayat, border areas, everything, boost digital inclusion and governance. Correct. Then next and last is this. ISRO conducts Gaganyaan IADT-02 test at Sriharikota, focusing on safe landing systems for astronauts. Now, this is again also a small topic. So basically, okay, now they have two modules. One is a service module that can take it around, and the other is the capsule where the astronauts will be located. Okay. Now, Gaganyaan is India's mission to take Indian astronauts to the space and then return back. Okay, the timelines are like in 4 days they have to go and come back. All this timeline is there. So now Gaganyaan mission. So before we can send the astronauts or humans from India to the space, we need to do many tests. Correct. For example, everything that ISRO knows by now, it has to test, it has to use almost everything, and also has to develop new things to reach the space and then reach back safely. Okay, now, so there are many tests like this. So there is PAD, there is IADT, okay, then there is launch vehicle tests. All these are different 4-5 tests they have. Now, PAD is what? This is pad abort test. So basically what happens here, let's say while launch only, if there is some issue, then this capsule that has the astronauts must be ejected. So that is pad abort test. Then IADT, this is launch vehicle test. So launch vehicle test, we have many launch vehicle tests. For example, we want to make human rated launch vehicle Mark 3. Launch vehicle Mark 3 is the launch vehicle that we have right now, but it is not viable to carry humans in it. For humans, you need, like for example, if you have flown in an airplane, even if the pressure changes slightly, you start feeling pain in your ears. So that means human beings are very sensitive. So all those things have to be maintained in a launch vehicle. So that is human rated LVM3. That is they are trying to make, that is comes under LV test. Now, IADT 01 they had conducted last year. Now they have also conducted 02. Now what is this? This we'll understand. Yeah, so ISRO conducted second integrated airdrop test. Now conducted on 10th of April at Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota. Then part of preparation for Gagan Jeevan mission, India's first human space flight, demonstrate crew safety and recovery capability builds on previous tests. Now see, what is this? So basically, see, the lower atmosphere that we have has a lot of particles, different kinds of particles, water vapors, gases and all that. Now that means this module has to go through all of it. So it will face a lot of friction. Now this friction is so much that you might have heard that small size asteroids, when they try to come to India, come to Earth, they are destroyed in the middle. Where they are destroyed? In the atmosphere. Why? Because there is so much friction in the atmosphere, it just combusts there. Correct? Now, if the module is not ready or is not made in such a way that it can withstand that amount of friction, and friction generates what? Friction generates heat. Correct? For example, if I rub my hand like this, it generates heat. Why? Because of friction. Correct? So friction generates heat, so it must withstand that amount of heat, and that is what we do in integrated airdrop test. The first is it can survive all this, and then when it is trying to drop, now of course it is coming from much height, so it has very high velocity. Correct? So it must be able to launch parachutes like this on its own and then land slowly on Earth. This is integrated airdrop test. So how they do airdrop test is basically not by taking everything to the orbit. Basically they will take a helicopter or something that can take it to that amount of height. Okay, and from that they will drop. They will just drop the module, and the module should do all this automatically. Basically retrograding, that is speed must slow down, then it should open the parachute on its own, and then it should come down like this at a speed of 3-5 meters per second. That is through which it is able to land safely on Earth. This is IADT. No, not with the astronauts right now. Not with the astronauts right now, but eventually we will do it. Okay. How was the integrated airdrop test conducted? Simulated crew modules, okay, were used. Then lifted 3 kilometers using Indian Air Force Chinook helicopters. From there it was dropped. Released over sea near Sriharikota coast. 10 parachute of 4 types were deployed in sequence. Okay, by that system itself. Then ensured safe descent and splashdown. So basically it lands on the sea, so safe splashdown. Recovered with support of Navy, DRDO, Air Force, and then that module was recovered. Then, why is this test important for India's space program? So of course this is the key step towards human spaceflight readiness. Ensures safe re-entry and landing capabilities, strengthens crew escape and recovery systems, then enhances inter-agency coordination. Correct? As you saw, Indian Air Force was also involved, then in retrieving, Navy was also involved, of course in building all of this, ISRO is always involved. So all those inter-agency coordination. Then boost India's capability in manned missions and future exploration. Okay, this is it, I think. Yes, this is it for your current affairs lecture. Thank you.